Hey crew, it's Pid, and I'm back with some more esoterica. Today we're diving back into the works of Mr. Aleister Crowley. This is Liber 4. We are just reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material and the link for my book, where I teach you to do magic responsibly, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration with hopefully a couple of chapters from Liber 4, Part 3, Chapter 3, The Formula of the Tetragrammaton. Yod He, Thou He, the ineffable name, Jehovah of the Hebrews. The four letters refer respectively to the four elements, water, fire, air, earth, in the order named. Alright, let's talk about it already. If you are unaware, we are doing on the Pidcast here, Saturdays noon Central Time, an exploration of the Hebrew alphabet, the meanings behind the letters, and the esoteric symbology that is hidden within the language. Some of the lessons that we can extract from it. We have a friend of the channel, Jason from Green Country Agroforestry, is taking us through his expertise is a big word. He wouldn't like me using it, but he has more experience than I do, so he's more of an expert than I am. We are both, however, just muddling through. But we are doing an exploration of what these things are, and we have already done Yod, He, and He. I'm not sure if we've done Vow or not. Languages are not my best strong suit, right? That is why we are outsourcing these things. We're doing that so that we can get a better understanding of the Hebrew alphabet for the study of the Kabbalah at some point. I don't place a whole lot of value in the Kabbalah, but I want to have the knowledge. And so that is a thing that is happening on the channel. But in addition to that, we have here presented Yahweh, which once upon a time I used to place a lot of stock in, and I don't anymore because I actually read the Bible. Right? I have the Bible study, which will be linked in the corner. It is an unconventional Bible study, and the very first video in that is why the Bible cannot be the authority. That is the result of the study that follows that. There's 161 videos on the other side of that video where we read aloud the Bible, and we get the information from it and see what it says. And what it says is that you cannot rely upon it. One of the other things that it says is that this particular name is probably attached to a demon. And if you are using it and expecting positive results, you are probably not going to get those. If that is confusing to you, I would refer you to the Bible study, find any of the chapters where we are talking about Jehovah, and see what he actually stands for. Or just read the book for yourself, but apparently nobody can do that. Alright, let's get back. This formula is of most universal aspect. The four letters refer respectively to the four elements, water, fire, water, air, and earth, in the order named. That may be true. I am not positive that that is true. For one, right, we have this word and this word, and while they are pronounced different, they are spelled exactly the same. They are the same character. There is a change in the pronunciation because of the location, but it is really the same word. And so for one of them to be water and one of them to be earth is going to be a hard sell for me. But again, I don't have the mastery of the Hebrew language. It is both remarkably simple and incredibly complex at the exact same time. And so there is some wisdom to be extracted from it, but one of the things that you need to pay attention to is that Hebrew is not Hebrew. It was taken from other people and assimilated into something, right? And it does contain some of that primary code, but that primary code actually came from somewhere else and has been corrupted through time. All right, now we can get back to the text. This formula is of the most universal aspect, as all things are necessarily comprehended in it. But its use in a magical ceremony is little understood, because ceremonies are unnecessary. And they can be needed. You can use a ceremony to remind you of the steps that you should take, but the ceremony holds no power in and of itself. It is a tool, and tools are powerless unless they are energetically invested in by a person. And so whatever ceremony you are using can be appropriate for you, but it is not something that you have to do, and it doesn't matter what ceremony it is. And if you are calling upon a name for the deity, you are doing it wrong. I mean, God is beyond any appellation that we can give him. God is too limiting already. Right? He has limited himself into the creation, and even that limitation that he has put upon himself is beyond our comprehension. God is not a man. He is not sitting on a throne waiting to judge you because you used a cuss word or ate pork. That is not a thing. And so, there is a great misunderstanding about the deity, and if you are putting human attributes onto the deity, you are doing it wrong. God is beyond our comprehension, and that is one of the very first fundamental things that you need to understand if you are going to be doing magic at all. The climax of the formula is, in one sense, before even the formulation of the yod. Yes, I would absolutely agree with that. You want to know why? I can tell you why. Because you set the intention before you did the intonation. Right? Intonation is the speaking aloud of the name, right? And so before you did that, you had already set the intention. You don't need the name. The intention is the part. Right? Now, adding the visual or the audible sound, the physical creation of your voice is physically creating reality. You speak into your life the things you want in your life, whether you realize that or not. If you are saying when you wake up in the morning, it's going to be a shitty day, it is going to be a shitty day, no matter how much gold you find. But if you wake up and you say, you know what, it's going to be a wonderful day, it's going to be a wonderful day no matter how much shit is thrown at you. It is entirely up to you. It is all mental, and it is about your intentionality. It is the things you set out for you. Right? And so this formula is setting out something, but it's not necessary to intone it. The intonation can help. It is an amplification. Your throat is the amplification device for manifestation. Right? Your throat in your solar plexus gives the fuel to the creation. And so you are literally speaking aloud creation, but it doesn't have to be this intonation. And so you have already done it before you speak it. That is true. And he doesn't understand that. I am positive. Let's see what he says. For the yod is the most divine aspect of the force. There you go. He doesn't understand. He doesn't get it. Right? There is no more divine aspect of the force. There's not. This is something that you are putting upon something that does not necessarily need it. Right? This is you assigning to something that does not belong to it. This is saying God is a man. No, it's not. Right? Now, I use he because that is the vernacular. I do not conceptualize God as a man. I say that because it is easier for you to understand, and I piss off less people that way. Right? I could say she just as easily. It is not a problem. It is equally incorrect. But I step on toes over here regularly. There are many things that I do that about, and I don't apologize for them. They are necessary. But if I can kind of tiptoe around some of the parts, then I will. Right? And this is me tiptoeing. I know, I tiptoe clumsily. The most divine aspect of the force, indeed. Like, some of the stuff he puts in here is just so wild. Like, I don't even get where he gets it. The remaining letters are but a solidification of the same thing. It must be understood that we are here speaking of the whole ceremony considered as a unity, not merely of that formula in which Yod is the god invoked, he, the archangel, and so on. In order to understand the ceremony under this formula, we must take a more extended view of the functions of the four weapons than we have hitherto done. I will take this opportunity to remember, or to remind you, that these four weapons are all internal and not external. The formation of the Yod is the formulation of the first creative force, of that Father who is called self-begotten, and unto whom it is said, Thou hast formulated thy father, and made fertile thy mother. Who said that? The adding of the he to the Yod is the marriage of that father to the great co-equal mother, who is a reflection of Nuit, as he is of Hadit. We will point out that there is not a father and mother. These are concepts. The divine holds them in equal proportion. And so while you can conceptualize him as the father and the mother equally at the same time, If you are doing so as separate entities, you are doing it incorrectly. And if you believe that they had a child and that became something, that is incorrect as well. Their union brings forth the son, Val, who is the heir. Now, this is the conceptualization of the Trinity. I believe that it is conceptualized incorrectly, but with understandable reasons, right? This is placing upon it a personification instead of just the entity or the forces behind, right? There are masculine forces, there are feminine forces. They are not necessarily male or female, right? We attribute those because of their qualities. Masculine is penetrative, it goes into. Feminine is absorptive, it takes into it, right? Those are masculine and feminine properties. Masculine is light because light penetrates the darkness. Feminine is dark because dark absorbs the light. These are qualities that we assign gender, but they aren't necessarily gender, right? And so this understanding is that these qualities exist, and the creation and destruction, the positive and negative, the masculine and feminine, joined together in balance create life. Right? That is what is really behind this entire understanding. It is not actually a father and a mother creating a son. It is the masculine and the feminine balancing into life. Finally, the daughter, Hay, is produced. She is both the twin sister and daughter of Vav. There is a further mystery herein, far deeper, for initiates. And once again, thanks for telling us something you're not going to tell us about, Mr. Asshole. His mission is to redeem her by making her his bride. The result of this is to set her upon the throne of her mother. It is only she whose youthful embrace can awaken the Eld in the old All-Father in this complex family relationship. The formula of the Tetragrammaton, as ordinarily understood, ending with the appearance of the daughter, is indeed a degradation. In this complex family relationship is symbolized the whole course of the universe. It will be seen that, after all, the climax is at the end. It is the second half of the formula which symbolizes the great work which we are pledged to accomplish. The first step of this is the attainment of the knowledge and the conversation of the holy guardian angel, which constitutes the adept of the inner order. Once again, I will point out that I have not had this, and yet I have had results that are trackable, traceable. This may be something, right? I did have an angel appear to me 25 years ago now, something like that, and say that I would spread the word of God. Not necessarily any of the control systems, but the word of God. That was the entire interaction. I had another spiritual experience where I got to see the creation of things and the interconnection of all things. It took away from me racism and a lot of other things, right? So it is not entirely without, but I didn't call upon any specific entity. I had no real interaction, right? Interaction would be both of us participating in a conversation. That did not happen, right? There was a spoken to me one sentence and it went away, and then I got to see some things and that was something, but I didn't communicate back. And even in the spiritual experience where I was initiated into the Order of Melchizedek, which I do not believe is linked to a bloodline, even in that experience, I was there. I did take part, kind of, but for the most part, it was not an interaction. It was a one-sided giving of something. And so while there may be some interaction with an entity, it is not intrinsic. And in addition to, none of the things that I talk about in this book, none of them are related to the entities at all. I acknowledge them. I talk about the theory of spiritual evolution in the book, but I don't call upon any entities. I don't use them for any of the things. That might be a self-limiting belief, right? That might be something that is keeping me from attaining something else. But I don't have any reason to believe that, right? I have opened myself up to these things, and I have had 0 takers, right? So just wanted to point that out, right? There is possibly some holy guardian angel that is associated, right? I did have a couple of experiences, but they were not interactions, and I'm not sure that that was the first step of attainment. I mean, I don't believe that that was the experience at all, really. I mean, the first step was the seeking. That was the first step. The re-entry of these twin spouses into the womb of the mother is that initiation described in Liber 418, which gives admission to the inmost order of the A delta A delta. Of the last step we cannot speak. Re-entry of spouses into the womb. Yeah, we're just going to leave that alone. That is just entirely stupid. It will now be recognized that to devise a practical magical ceremony to correspond to Tetragrammaton in this exalted sense might be difficult, if not impossible. In such a ceremony, the rituals of purification alone might occupy many incarnations. It will be necessary, therefore, to revert to the simpler view of Tetragrammaton, remembering only that the He, final, is the throne of the spirit, of the Shin, of Pentagrammaton. The Yod will represent a swift and violent creative energy. Following this will be a calmer and more reflective, but even more powerful flow of will, the irresistible force of a mighty river. This state of mind will be followed by an expansion of the consciousness. It will penetrate all space, and this will finally undergo a crystallization resplendent with interior light. Such modifications of the original will may be observed in the course of the invocations when they are properly performed. The peculiar dangers of each are obvious. That is, of the first is a flash in the pan, a misfire. That of the second, of falling into dreaminess or reverie. That of the third, loss of concentration. A mistake in any of these points will prevent or injure the proper formation of the fourth. And the expression which will be used in chapter 15, inflame thyself, etc., only the first stage is specified. But if that is properly done, the other stages will flow as if by necessity. So far is it written concerning the formula of Tetragrammaton. Next up, chapter 4, the formula of Alhim and that of Alim. Alhim, Elohim, is the exoteric word for gods. It is indeed plural, but that doesn't necessarily indicate many gods. It does indicate many entities. Those are not the same thing. Footnote. Gods are the forces of nature. Their names are the laws of nature. Thus, they are eternal, omnipotent, omnipresent, and so on, and thus their wills are immutable and absolute. Now, as concepts of forces, okay, right? Fire, earth, air, water, those things they are true, they are real. Whether there is an entity behind them, right? I don't conceptualize that there is some entity of the moon making sure that it is turned in the right way, right? There is a force, and you can identify the force however you want, but the force, while of God, is not God, right? Just like the creation is part of God, but it is not God in his entirety. The creation is entirely of God, but it is not God in his entirety. God is beyond the creation. Right? In the exact same way, these forces can be referred to as little gods, but they are not gods at all. Right? They are within. If there is something within, it cannot be the without. Right? That is one of the reasons why God cannot manifest himself inside of himself in completion. Right? You cannot go inside of yourself in that way. That is one of the limitations. And so, while you can identify these forces by whatever appellations that you would like, I wouldn't attribute God to it. I wouldn't do that. That might be a bad idea. It is the masculine plural of a feminine noun, but its nature is principally feminine. It represents Sakti, or Te. Femininity always means form, manifestation. The masculine, Siva or Tao, is always a concealed force. I would say that is not true. All right, so femininity can mean manifestation. The masculine being concealed is the problem for me, right? The masculine is the penetrative force. It is the thing that goes within, right? It is not the thing that takes within, which would be existent. It is the thing creating change. It is the logos. That is the masculine part of it. The void is the feminine, the logos is the masculine. And so the active part is not going to be the concealed part, right? It is the part that you're going to notice. It is quite literally the light around you. And so for me, this is not going to be correct at all. It is a perfect hieroglyph of the number 5. This should be studied in a note on Genesis, Equinox 1 and 2. I have several notes on Genesis. You would probably be better to check those out. They will be linked in the corner above. It is called the Unconventional Bible Study. The elements are all represented as in tetragrammaton, but there is no development from one into the others. They are, as it were, thrown together, untamed, only sympathizing by virtue of their wild and stormy but elastically resistless energy. The central letter is He, the letter of breath, and represents spirit. The first letter, Aleph, is the natural letter of air, and the final mem is the natural letter of water. I don't know, right? I don't know that we hit those concepts. Jason, if you were here, remind me if we did. But I don't know that we hit this, and I will bring it up Saturday when we go. I don't know that there is attributed these things to these things, and it might be, right? But it doesn't make it intrinsic. It doesn't make it natural, right? For me, the beginning is going to be the spirit, and that can be represented by air because air is a good representative for that. The way that it works is before the beginning there was God, and God was infinite and without form, the void. And then God decided to become and limited himself from the infinite into the finite. Creation, spirit. Spirit is all things created at once. Everything that exists is the spirit. It is quite literally God limiting himself into the creation. It is all of the elements created. But at that moment of creation, they were all in stasis. That is the beginning, like taking a snapshot, a picture of everything in perfect stasis. Absolute zero. All of the elements are there. There is no movement. And then God said, I am the light. And that is what he said. He did not say, let there be. He said, I am. He said, I am the light. And he became the light, which was setting into motion the spirit, allowing the creation of things. And so you can absolutely take the air to be that, right? There's all the elements in discoordination. No water formed, right? No simple combinations. Just the elements existing. And then you get heat, and heat begins the change. And so it's kind of up in the air between whether it would be air or whether it would be fire. For me, there is no movement until the fire becomes. And the fire allows air to create. And so for me, it's going to be air or fire first. Then either air or physical matter, either one is acceptable, but air would be a better because it is the most or the least dense, and that is where creation would begin, right? The elements start combining into water or the various other combinations of elements, and then those accrete into the solid mass that is Earth. Water would be a step between there and the Earth, and so it is probably going to be fire, air, water, Earth in the order of creation. Now, that is just me going through the logical process of determining how it might be. That is not something to set dogma upon, right? It makes sense logically. It is not just randomly assigning some attribute to it. It is assigning for purpose, a purpose that has a definite understanding. But it doesn't mean I'm correct. I can be corrected in anything. If I am wrong, I am willing to be corrected. But I don't think he's got it right. Right? And that's the point. Aleph, as we have learned in the Pitcast, is the separation between this and that. The very first step into anything is understanding the difference between this and that, right? That is, oh, look, I am me, this is not me. The difference between good and evil, the difference between positive and negative, creative and destructive, masculine and feminine, all is contained in the Aleph, which is this and that, the yid and the yod. All right, back to the text. And Mem is mother, right? That is a true thing. Together, Aleph and Mem make Om, the mother within whose womb the cosmos is conceived. But Yod is not the natural letter of fire. Its juxtaposition with He sanctifies that fire into the Yod of Tetragrammaton. Similarly, we find Lamed for Earth, where we should expect to find Tao, in order to emphasize the influence of Venus, who rules Libra. And I will point out, as I so often do, right? Just because there are planets do not mean that they have some impact upon your life. It is possible, right? But it is not even likely, right? It is possible at the moment of your conception that the electromagnetic forces of where everything was located in the cosmos played a part. There is the joining together, the spark of creation. But if there was any significance to the zodiac, it would be attributed to the moment of creation. It would not be at the moment of birth. You have a soul prior to that. There are people that will argue about that, but I don't. Right? The process of impregnation is a sperm meets an egg, and when those two meet, there is a flash of light created. That is the insolation progress. Right? That is how it happens. They have literally observed it with cameras. The sperm, the egg, light becomes, and then life becomes. It is intricately linked. It is all the way together. And so there is no influence outside of that moment, right? If there is a magnetic influence from the magnetic forces of creation, that's when it's going to affect you, not when you're born. What difference does it make when you're born? It makes a difference when you're created. And so if there were any validity to the zodiac, which I don't necessarily believe, I have done an investigation, it would be at the moment of conception, not at the moment of birth. And so it doesn't matter what Libra and Venus associations are. We have the wrong understanding of that entirely. Alhim, therefore, represents rather the formula of consecration than that of a complete ceremony. It is the breath of benediction, yet so potent that it can give life to clay and light to darkness. In consecrating a weapon, Aleph is the whirling force of the thunderbolt, the lightning which flameth out of the east and even into the west. This is the gift of the wielding of the thunderbolt of Zeus, or Indra, the god of air. Lamed is the ox goad, the driving force, and it is also the balance, representing the truth and love of the magician. I will once again refer you to the Pitcast. Go back 3 weeks, we dealt with Lamed. It did not mean ox goad. And I will link it. Pitcast will be up here. It is going to be at the bottom because it is new. It is the loving care which he bestows upon perfecting his instruments and the equilibrium of that force which initiates the ceremony. The letters Aleph and Lamed are infinitely important in this Eon of Horus. The Eon of Horus, you say? Fuck off with that. They are indeed the key of the Book of the Law. No more can be said in this place than that Aleph is Harpocrates, Bacchus diffuse, the Holy Ghost, the pure fool or innocent babe, who is also the wandering singer, who impregnates the king's daughter with himself as her child. Lamed is the king's daughter, satisfied by him, holding his swords and balances in her lap. These weapons are the judge, armed with the power to execute his will, and 2 witnesses, in whom every truth be established, in accordance with whose testimony he gives judgment. Okay, so Aleph is Harpocrates, which was a person. Bacchus diffuse, which was a conceptualization of wildness. The Holy Ghost, which is quite literally the Logos moving, right? We talked about the Logos. The Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit, is the movement in the creation. The pure fool, you are saying that the Logos is a fool, okay? Or the innocent babe. The wandering singer and the innocent babe are not going to be the same thing. Right? Lamed is the king's daughter, satisfied by him, holding his swords and balances in her lap. Once again, I will refer you to Jason, where he explains things in a much clearer light. And if it wasn't for the fact that I have such a hard time retaining these language information, right, I have to go back and watch these podcasts myself, because I am attempting to learn this information, and while I have some of it right, I did fairly well without Aleph and Bet and some of those things, but I can't quite remember what Lamed is, and it's really bugging me because this is not it, and I can't say what it is. So drop it in the box, please. Yod is the creative energy, the procreative power, and yet Yod is the solitude and silence of the hermitage into which the magician has shut himself. That would be exactly wrong. Right? The procreative power would be the masculine, the penetrative, that is not isolation. Mem is the letter of water, and it is the mem final, whose long flat line suggests the sea at peace. HB, mem final. Not the ordinary, initial and medial. Mem, whose hieroglyph is a wave. HB, mem. In the symbolism above outlined, Yod is the mercurial virgin word, the spermatozoa concealing the light under a cloak. The mem is the amniotic fluid, the flood wherein the life-bearing ark. You are really reaching for an analogy there. There is no, fuck off. And then, in the center of all, brood spirit, which combines the mildness of the lamb with the horns of the ram, and is the letter of Bacchus, or Christ. The letter He is the formulation of Nuith, which makes possible the process described in the previous notes. But it is not permissible here to explain fully the exact matter or manner of this adjustment. I have preferred the exoteric attributions, which are sufficiently informative for the beginner. After the magician has created his instrument, and balanced it truly, and filled it with the lightnings of his will, then is the weapon laid away to rest. And in this silence, a true consecration comes. So after you finish your ceremony is when the consecration comes. The formula of Alim. It is extremely interesting to contrast with the above the formula of the elemental gods deprived of the creative spirit. One might suppose that as Alim is the masculine plural of the masculine noun Al, its formula would be more virile than that of Alhim, which is the masculine plural of the feminine noun Al. A moment's investigation is sufficient to dissipate the illusion. The word masculine has no meaning except in relation to some feminine correlative. The word Alim may in fact be considered as neuter. By a rather absurd convention, neuter objects are treated as feminine on account of their superficial resemblance in passivity and inertness with the unfertilized female. But the female produces life by the intervention of the male, while the neuter does so only when impregnated by spirit. Thus, we find the feminine Ama becoming Ama. Ama is 42, the number of sterility. Ama is 52, that of virility. Ev, Bien, the sun. Becoming Ama through the operation of the phallic yod, while Alim, the congress of dead elements, only fructifies by the brooding of spirit. This being so, how can we describe Alim as containing a magical formula? Inquiry discloses the fact that this formula is of a very special kind. The word adds up to 81, which is the number of the moon, which means absolutely nothing. Right? We have talked about the complicated mathematics and how if you are doing complicated mathematics, you are doing it wrong. I do not equivocate about that. You may be able to find something in Gematria, but it is exactly what you are looking for, and you will make so. I use this example all the time because it is so wonderfully apropos, right? Donald Trump is the Antichrist, and if you want to prove that, you can find it in Gematria. You can put in there Donald J. Trump, and whatever those letters mean will probably come out to Antichrist, and if it doesn't, you can change the variables. You can say Donald John Trump. You can say DJ Trump. You can just put Trump. You can make it say what you want to. Right? That is one of the many problems with Gematria. It is one of the most problems. Most of the things that have been found through Gematria have been found exactly because someone was looking for them. And if you are looking for something, you're going to find it. Right? I love this example, right? If you are looking for something to blame racism on, you will find something to blame racism on, even if it does not exist. That happens every single fucking day. Right? There are many things that are applied to this. Like, racism's not a good thing. I'm not defending it, right? But it is not the villain that it is made out to be. It is not holding you back from a job. That's your mindset, right? There may be a racist. If there is a racist holding you back from a job, you didn't want that job anyway. You don't want to work with those people. They are horrible, right? But most of the things that are attributed to racism are not. They have absolutely nothing to do with it. They weren't looking for you. You didn't meet the qualifications. It normally is really that simple. It is the same with this, right? You can find what you are looking for if you are looking for it, whether it exists or not. It is thus the formula of witchcraft, which is under Hecate. See Aleister Crowley's Orpheus for the invocation of this goddess, because he couldn't stick to any one. Like, if there is one thing you can say about Mr. Crowley, he was definitely promiscuous, right? He was promiscuous with his countries that he lived in. He was promiscuous with his scarlet women, and he was promiscuous with his deities as well. It is only in the romantic medieval perversion of science that represents young women as partaking in witchcraft, which is, properly speaking, restricted to the use of such women as are no longer women in the magical sense of the word, because they are no longer capable of corresponding to the formula of the male and are therefore neuter rather than feminine. It is for this reason that their method has always been referred to the moon, in that sense of the term in which she appears not as the feminine correlative of the sun, but as the burnt-out, dead, airless satellite of Earth. Okay, so this is his opinion. And I'm not saying that because witchcraft has any intrinsic power, right? That is not what I'm saying. This is his understanding of it and of women. And he doesn't have it, right? There is nothing intrinsic to the worship of Hecate or witchcraft that makes it where a woman can no longer have children, no longer have a spouse. Now, I will grant that in current days there is a heavy propensity towards the sapphic love, right? The woman on woman, and that is mostly a perversion, right? There are people that are born that way. I fully believe that. But there are a lot of people that participate because of perversion. Or they are rebelling against control systems, for instance. They're rebelling against their parents, for instance, or the government or whatever. Those things do happen, but most of the time it is not that, right? Most of the time, if you are okay with putting same-sex genitals in your mouth, you are born that way. You do not develop the taste for them, right? And that is something I am willing to stand upon no matter what, right? I understand fully that not everybody is that way, right? There are definitely people who seek the perversion of the pleasure. That is true. And that is intrinsically bad. That is true as well. But there are the majority of the people who participate in same-sex relations really are keyed that way. And you don't have to believe that. That is your reality. In the real reality, God created them exactly like they are, and it might be that their lesson is to live that life. You do not know. You assume that you know based upon your moral judgments. And so that is what he is doing right here. He has had some experience with people who practice witchcraft, and he was not able to make them into his scarlet woman, right? And so he says that they are no longer capable of corresponding to the formula of the male. Right? He got rejected. And so they are therefore neuter rather than feminine. Right? And not as the feminine correlative of the sun, but as the burnt out, dead, airless satellite of the earth. I guarantee you that is not how they identify the moon. I can guarantee you that that is not how the people who are worshiping Hecate through the moon refer to the moon. That is something that you are placing upon there because of your moral judgments. And for Crowley to be placing moral judgments upon anything is extremely wild. Back to the text. No true magical operation can be performed by the formula of Aleister. We will go farther than that, won't we? All the works of witchcraft are illusory. Says the man who had nothing but illusory results for the entirety of his magical operations. and their apparent effects depend on the idea that it is possible to alter things by the mere rearrangement of them. One must not rely upon the false analogy of the xylenes to rebut this argument. It is quite true that geometrical isomers act in different manners towards the substance to which they are brought into relation. It is of course necessary, sometimes, to rearrange the elements of a molecule before that molecule can form either the masculine or the feminine element in a true magical combination with some other molecule. It is therefore occasionally inevitable for a magician to reorganize the structure of certain elements before proceeding to his operation proper. Although such work is technically witchcraft, it must not be regarded as undesirable on that ground. For all operations which do not transmute matter fall, strictly speaking, under this heading. But you just said that it was all illusory, right? All the works of witchcraft are illusory, and so what are you even saying here? You are contradicting yourself, right? It is occasionally inevitable to use the structure of certain elements, and it is technically witchcraft, right? All operations which do not transmute matter fall, strictly speaking, under this heading, which is illusory. Right? That is what you were saying here. And once again, I am not entirely surprised by it, right? I'm surprised by his candor, right? But that's not even his intention. It just kind of slipped through. Right? Once again, we have intentionality revealed. This is him not understanding things. The real objection to this formula is not inherent in its own nature. Witchcraft consists in treating it as the exclusive preoccupation of magic, and especially in denying to the Holy Spirit his right to indwell in his temple. I do want to point out this, right? I used to practice witchcraft. That was one of the, if you go back to the origin story, right, you watch where I came from. When I was in the Navy, I was a practicing pagan, even up to and including the practice of actual witchcraft. Now, I was not entirely welcome there. There is a certain degree of what he is talking about in those associations, but it wasn't an overbearing thing, right? I was able to practice with other people. I did these things, and it was entirely reliant upon ceremonies and tools, and those things are not necessary, and therefore the entire thing is inherently wrong. The intentionality behind the ceremonies can result in results, right? The tools aren't necessary. They can be needed, but they are not necessary. You can do all of the things without them, and it is possible to do them with them. But if you are doing them with them, you really get lesser results. It is less effective to follow the teachings of Wicca. It really is. It is less effective to follow the teachings of Crowley. It really is. Even to a lesser degree, the Golden Dawn and the things that they were about. Now, they were on to something closer to the truth than Mr. Crowley. We have dealt with their stuff. It is part of the playlist. And so I just want to point out here that I am not speaking, when I speak about witchcraft, I am not speaking from ignorance. I did practice it for probably close to a decade, and I got like 0 results. There was never anything that I did that was actually effective at all. Even doing the things in the way that it was prescribed had no results whatsoever. That is a truth that I have to mention. Right? Now, I don't know if to talk about that part of my life in that particular way because it was wrong. I was following the wrong path. I was doing the things exactly wrong. My intentionality was not correct. Right? There was a lot wrong with what I did. And that may have been the reason why it didn't work. It could be that you can follow the things and receive some benefits, but I didn't. Right? In no way, shape, or form. Now, I have not, since the things that I talk about here, done any of those things. Right? When I made this wand that I talk about right here, right, that was before all of this. Right? That was relying upon these things to a certain degree. And so, intrinsically not going to work. All right, back to the footnote. The initiate of the 11th degree of OTO will remark that there is a totally different formula of Alim, complementary with that discussed. 81 may be regarded as the number of Yesod rather than of Luna. There we go with them numbers not adding up right. The actual meaning of the word may be taken as indicating the formula. Aleph may be referred to Harpocrates, with allusion to the well-known poem of Catullus. Lamed may imply the exaltation of Saturn and suggest the Three of Swords in a particular manner. Yod will then recall Hermes, and Mem, the hanged man. We have thus a tetragrammaton which contains no feminine component. The initial force is here the Holy Spirit, and its vehicle or weapon, the swords and balances. Justice is then done upon the mercurial virgin, with the result that the man is hanged or extended, and is slain in this manner. Such an operation makes creation impossible, as in the former case, but here there is no question of rearrangement. The creative force is employed deliberately for destruction, and is entirely absorbed in its own sphere, or cylinder on Einstein's equations of action. This work is to be regarded as holiness to the Lord. The Hebrews, in fact, confer the title of Kadosh, holy, upon its adepts. Its effect is to consecrate the magicians who perform it in a very special way. We may take note also of the correspondence of 9 with Teth, 11, Leo, and the serpent. The great merits of this formula are that it avoids contact with the inferior planes, that it is self-sufficient, that it involves no responsibilities, and that it leaves its masters not only stronger in themselves, but wholly free to fulfill their essential natures. Its abuse is an abomination. Okay, so all of this is theoretical, right? I don't really need to expand upon this. This is tying this in with the tarot for some reason, but it is not using the correct interpretations of the tarot. Once again, the Teote deck, what people call the Thoth deck, is completely imbalanced. I would not use that for readings. I'm going to see, because some of these were short and some of them were long. All right, we'll try and do this one last one. Chapter 5, the formula of IAO. This formula is the principal and most characteristic formula of Osiris, of the redemption of mankind. I is Isis, nature, ruined by Apophis, the destroyer, and restored to life by the Redeemer, Osiris. There is a quite different formula in which I is the father, O the mother, and A the child, and yet another in which I, AO are all fathers of different kinds balanced by HHH. 3 mothers to complete the universe. In a third, the true formula of the beast, 666, I and O, are the opposites, which form the field of operation of A. But this is a higher matter unsuited for this elementary handbook. See, however, Liber Semic, point 2, section J. These interpretations I don't know anything about, but if it is relying upon entirely masculine, it is going to be wrong. If it is relying upon the imbalance between the two, it's going to be wrong. The same idea is expressed by the Rosicrucian formula of the Trinity. Ex Deo nascimur in Jesu morimur, per spiritum sanctum revivissimius. Let's see if we can get that pulled up real quick. We'll DuckDuckGo that and see if we can get a translation. Give me an answer. Go. Translate. From God we are born, in Christ we die, in the Holy Spirit we are born. Yeah, no. It is also identical with the word lux, LVX, which is formed by the arms of a cross. It is this formula which is implied in those ancient and modern monuments in which the phallus is worshipped as the savior of the world. The doctrine of resurrection, as vulgarly understood, is false and absurd. It is not even scriptural. St. Paul does not identify the glorified body which rises with the mortal body which dies. On the contrary, he repeatedly insists on the distinction. Okay, so let's hit it real quick. Paul had 0 experience with Jesus. He had a spiritual experience which he took as being Jesus, but there is no reason to believe that it was, because the teachings of Paul were in direct contradiction with everything that was taught by any apostle that actually met Jesus in the flesh. Everything that Peter Matthew, Luke, the Gospels, everything that they wrote is contradicted by Paul entirely. All of the things that he says is in contradiction with Peter, who was supposed to be the rock. Yes, I know there's that whole argument, Jason. We're doing the literal thing, not the allegory today. And so, as a literal read, that is not going to work, right? There is, however, an allegory that is attached to this of Gnostic understanding. Through that, the writings of Paul make sense. As interpreted as literal things, they don't, right? They are in contradiction. Like when the Apostle Peter is talking about being in opposition with that other apostle, it is Paul they are talking about. Anytime they are talking about the opposition between them, it is between the apostles that actually studied with Jesus and Paul, because Paul did not hold to the teachings of Jesus at all, at least as it is described in the Bible. I mean, there are other sources, there are other books, I understand that. We're talking about the one reference, and this is not there, right? There is no real reason, if you believe in the apostles, the resurrection of Jesus and all of that, to listen to anything that Paul says. It is all intrinsically wrong according to what you believe. That is one of the major contradictions in the New Testament. There are many, but that is one of the major ones. And once again, I refer you to the Bible study where we have done this in depth. We have talked about this. I am not just saying things. We have done the study. That's 161 hours. The same is true of a magical ceremony. The magician who is destroyed by absorption in the Godhead is really destroyed. The miserable mortal automaton remains in the circle. It is of no more consequence to him than the dust of the floor. You do need to be careful in the ceremonies you perform. It is, for all that, his instrument acquired by him as an astronomer buys a telescope. See Liber for a full explanation of the objects attained by the stratagem of incarnation. Also part 4 of this book, 4. That would be where we are. Oh, no, yeah. I don't know. Now, we're in part 3, chapter 5. Yeah. Anyway, but before entering into the details of IAO as a magic formula, it should be remarked that it is essentially the formula of yoga or meditation. In fact, of elementary mysticism in all its branches. In beginning a meditation practice, there is always a quiet pleasure, a gentle, natural growth. If not, one is not working properly. Let me remind you. Right, look at this. Look at this. He says, in the beginning of meditation practice, there is always a quiet pleasure, a gentle, natural growth. Gentle, natural growth. He says that, right? And the footnote. Now, this is not the footnote added in the second edition. This is the footnote added by him. If not, one is not working properly. I will refer you to the chapters where we were talking about meditation in this book, where he's telling you that you have to contort yourself into uncomfortable positions. That is not gentle, natural growth. He is telling you that it will be painful to the point that you have to ignore the pain and just push through, even though it might cause you serious bodily injury. That is not gentle, natural growth. Once again, we are directly contradicting something else that was taught in this book. And once again, there is a direct contradiction between something he has already said and something he is trying to say now. And they both sound good, neither one have any value. And this is true, right? This part, right, this is true. There should be a quiet pleasure, a gentle, natural growth. And if not, one is not working properly. If there is discomfort, you're not doing it right. If it's painful, you're definitely not doing it right. One takes a lively interest in the work. It seems easy. One is quite pleased to have started. This stage represents Isis. Sooner or later, it is succeeded by depression, the dark night of the soul, an infinite weariness and detestation of the work. I don't know about that. I do believe, most likely, more probably, in most cases, this is exactly the opposite. Normally, in most cases, you're going to have the dark night of the soul. And going through the dark night of the soul is going to lead you to a meditative practice by which you will achieve the ability to overcome the dark night of the soul. That to me is an intrinsic part of the process. This again is going to be to me exactly wrong. And that again is something that I can be corrected in. It may be that this is true, and I don't deal in absolutes almost ever. And so I always try to maintain that I am not entirely correct. There are still things that I need to learn for damn sure. But I do have at least some bit of knowledge, and that bit of knowledge directly contradicts this. And that is why I'm saying it in the way that I'm saying it. Not that you cannot meditate and then have a dark night of the soul. That is entirely possible. But most often it is going to be the other way around. Back to the text. The simplest and easiest acts become almost impossible to perform. Such impotence fills the mind with apprehension and despair. The intensity of this loathing can hardly be understood by any person who has not experienced it. This is the period of apophis. It is followed by the arising not of Isis, but of Osiris. The ancient condition is not restored, but a new and superior condition is created, a condition only rendered possible by the process of death. And this, again, is the process, like in the order that I stated, right? Dark night, meditation, awakening. The alchemists themselves taught this same truth. The first matter of the work was base and primitive, though natural. After passing through various stages, the black dragon appeared, but from this arose the pure and perfect gold. Even in the legend of Prometheus, we find an identical formula concealed, and a similar remark applies to those of Jesus Christ and of many other mythical god-men worshipped in different countries. See J.G. Fraser, The Golden Bough, J.M. Robertson, Pagan Christ, A. Crowley, Jesus. I would not recommend this one, right? I have read The Golden Bough. It was like 25 years ago. I am not conversant in it, so I'm not going to try and talk about that, but I seem to remember there being at least some decent information, but again, I did not have my current knowledge, and I am unfamiliar with J.G. Roberts. But I can tell you pretty emphatically that this guy does not know what he is talking about at all. A magical ceremony constructed on this formula is thus in close essential harmony with the natural mystic process. We find it the basis of many important initiations, notably the 3rd degree in Masonry, and the 5 degree equals 6 square ceremony of G delta D delta, described in Equinox 1-3. So they have 2 groups, right? You got A delta, and G delta, D delta, which appears to be a bastardization of God. That lets you know something. A ceremonial self-initiation may be constructed with advantage on this formula. The essence of it consists in robing yourself as a king, then stripping and slaying yourself, and rising from that death to the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. And once again, I will point out that this part right here, to me, is not necessary. This formula, although now superseded by that of Horus, the crowned and conquering child, remains valid for those who have not yet assimilated the point of view of the law of Thelema. Once again, we will point out that this is going to be incorrect as well. Right? Crowley created Thelema, and therefore Thelema has to be wrong because Crowley was wrong. Right? Not just a little bit wrong, like big wrong. Big wrong. So you can choose to follow Thelema if you wish. I would not recommend that at all. Like, I say all of the time, there are control systems, right? You will be part of a control system no matter what. At least the government that controls you is one. But there are religious control systems that people have been indoctrinated through in their life. You get to choose as an adult which one you are going to follow, or none of the ones that are available. I tell people all the time that God will find you where you are, and so it doesn't really matter which one of them you follow. I understand that the control systems think that that's not true, right? They believe that if you don't accept this one particular sacrifice at this one particular time, you are condemned to burn forever, right? That is stupid. There is no biblical reason to believe that, but that is what people believe. You are free to believe those things, right? For the most part, it's not going to hurt you. If you follow the teachings of Christ, the things that are in the red letters, you are going to be fine. For the most part, there are some that might throw you off, right? That whole give away all that you own, that's not balanced. But the meaning behind that was to not love the things so much that you can't give them away, not necessarily to give things away. That is a misunderstanding of the allegory. But you can find God in Christianity, you can find God in Buddhism, you can find God in Hinduism, you can find God pretty much anywhere because God will find you. But some of them make it more difficult, right? If you are following the 12 pillars, you're going to be okay. If you are following the hadiths, you're probably not, right? There is problems. If you are following the words in red, you're probably going to be all right. If you're following the words of Paul, you might not. And there are things in there. But if you are following, seeking, trying to do, following the best path, doing the right things, you're going to be fine regardless. Thelema is another one of these problems, right? Thelema is based upon a lie, based upon a incorrect understanding fundamentally of everything, and created wholesale with negative intentions, right? Now, that might be true for the other control systems as well. Those stories were invented for a reason, and I use that word intentionally. Moses almost certainly did not write Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, or Deuteronomy, right? Almost certainly. There is no reference to Moses in Kings or Chronicles at all. There is no reason to even believe that Moses ever existed. There are many reasons to believe that he did not. The same is true with David and Samson, by the way. Right? There is no reason to believe that there was a first temple. There is reason to believe in a second one, and it might be, as one theory has been put out, that the emperor, I guess it was the emperor of Persia, the Medians, not the Medians, the Babylonians, right? There is a very high likelihood that Babylon, in trying to assimilate the area of Judea and Israel, created a history for the people of Judea and Israel at the time of the second temple. That is something that has a reason to believe it. Right? There is no real reason to believe Moses. Right? And again, I refer you to the Bible study where we dealt with that in detail in Exodus. There are no real reason to believe that Moses existed. There's not really a whole lot of reason to believe that David existed or Solomon. Solomon and David have some external references. Moses, not even really. But they are not related in the same way that they are portrayed in the book at all. The temple being there is up for debate. So there is no real reason to even believe that there was in the land of Israel prior to the second any one particular group as a homogeneous unit. Regardless, right? Making decisions about what you will follow is one of the most important things that you will do, and you should know the foundations upon which something was laid, as well as the things that are stated within it. The lemma is based upon a flawed understanding of everything put into place by a man who identified himself with evil, right? Not with bad, with evil. He called himself the beast of Revelation. That is the personification of evil. He identified all of his lovers as the Scarlet Woman, the personification of evil, the whore of Babylon. Right? There is no reason to follow this religion, but see Appendix Liber Semek. Compare also the Book of the Spirit of the Living Gods, where there is a ritual given in extenso on slightly different lines. There is an etymological identity between Tetragrammaton and IAO, but the magical formulae are entirely different, and the descriptions here given have shown. Professor William James, in his Varieties of Religious Experience, has well classified religion as the once born and the twice born, but the religion now proclaimed in Liber Legis harmonizes these by transcending them. There is no attempt to get rid of death by denying it as among the once born, nor to accept death as the gate of a new life as among the twice born. With the A delta, life and death are equally incidents in a career. very much like day and night in the history of a planet. But to pursue the simile, we regard this planet from afar. And that is not too far removed from what I believe, right? I believe that we existed prior to incarnation and we will exist after incarnation. How that exactly unfolds, I don't know, but I believe that it was. I believe that we came from somewheres, we returned to somewheres, and that is the same somewheres, in which point we get to decide whether to continue the cycle or not. I believe in voluntarism, not prison, not energy harvesting. We are not necessarily feed for these entities, although they do feed upon us. And so, all of that is just to say that I do believe that there will be something after this incarnation, but we are to be here for this incarnation. Not for the afterlife, but for the current life, to be fully engaged in our current life, to be the best here that we can be here. Not with the expectation of a reward later, but to be the best that we can be here, now. And so I am at least in a little bit of accordance with that, right? Not entirely, for sure, but at least a little bit. A brother of A Delta looks at what another person would call himself as one, or rather some, among a group of phenomena. He that is nothing, whose consciousness is in one sense the universe, considered as a single phenomena in time and space, and in another sense is the negation of that consciousness. The body and mind of a man are only important, if at all, as the telescope of the astronomer to him. If the telescope were destroyed, it would make no appreciable difference to the universe which that telescope reveals. It will now be understood that this formula of IAO is the formula of Tifereth. The magician who employs it is conscious of himself as a man liable to suffering and anxious to transcend that state by becoming one with God. It will appear to him as the supreme ritual, as the final step, but, as has already been pointed out, it is but a preliminary. For the normal man today, however, it represents considerable attainment, and there is much earlier formula whose investigation will occupy Chapter 6. The Master Tyrian, and I will point out that that is Crowley, right? He refers to himself in at least 4, maybe 5 different ways. In the 17th year of the Eon, has reconstructed the word Io to satisfy the new conditions of magic imposed by progress. The word of the law, being Thelema, whose number is 93, this number should be the canon of a corresponding mass. Accordingly, as he has expanded IAO by treating the O as an IN, and then adding vowel as a prefix and affix, the full word is then vowel yod aleph ayin vowel, whose number is 93. We may analyze this new word in detail and demonstrate that it is a proper hieroglyph of the ritual of self-initiation in this Eon of Horus. For the correspondence in the following notes, see Liber 777. The principal points are these. At 2, no, Hebrew, no, correspondence, other. This is not going to make any sense. I am not going to try to read through it. The source material will be linked down before, but this is not arranged in a way that is readable. There is many problems, right? And so I'm just going to go ahead and, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Well, there's a little bit down here. There's a lot down here. Never mind. Let's go. All right, we are skipping this, so we are not going to have the full understanding. I am going to read through the rest of this. This, like, male and that should be female, less the, like, there's stuff missing here. This is not readable. But iota alpha diagramma varies in significance with successive eons. Eon of Isis, matriarchal age, the great work conceived as a straightforward, simple affair. We find the theory reflected in the customs of matriarchy. Parthenogenesis is supposed to be true. The Virgin, Yod Virgo, contains in herself the principle of growth, the epicene hermetic seed. It becomes the babe in the egg. A. Harpocrates. By virtue of the spirit. A equals air impregnating the mother, vulture. And this becomes the sun or sun. Diagramma, the letter of Tifereth, 6, even when spelt as omega in Coptic. Eon of Osiris, the patriarchal age, 2 sexes. I conceived as the father wand, Yod, in Tetragrammaton. A is the babe, is pursued by the dragon who cast a flood from his mouth to swallow it. See Revelation 7, that is a complete misinterpretation. See the Bible study. The dragon is also the mother, the evil mother, of Freud. Of course, you are referring to Freud. If you are unaware, I'm about to be diving into psychology. Right, we're wrapping up this one. We're going to do another quick study, and then we're getting into Jung, because Jung is a better source for psychology. It is harbor crates, threatened by the crocodile in the Nile. We find the symbolism of the ark, the coffin of Osiris, etc. The lotus is the yoni. The water is the amniotic fluid. In order to live his own life, the child must leave the mother and overcome the temptation to return to her for refuge. Kundry, Armida, Jocasta, Circe, etc. are symbols of this force which tempt the hero. He may take her as his servant. Her sole speech in the last act is Dinian Dinian. When he has mastered her so as to heal his father, Amfortas, avenge him, Osiris, or pacify him, Jehovah. But in order to grow to manhood, he must cease to depend upon her, earning the lance, Percival, claiming his arms, Achilles, and making his club, Hercules. Note that all these three remain for a time as neuters among women, prevented from living the male life. There is no reason to associate any of these things with, what are you saying? And wander the waterless wilderness like Krishna, Jesus, Oedipus, Chai, Tao, Lambda, until the hour when, as the king's son or knight errant, he must win the princess and set himself upon a strange throne. Almost all the legends of heroes imply this formula in strikingly similar symbols. Diagramma. Thou, the sun. Son. He is supposed to be mortal, but how is this shown? It seems an absolute perversion of truth. The sacred symbols have no hint of it. This lie is the essence of the great sorcery. Osirian religion is a Freudian fantasy fashioned of man's dread of death and ignorance of nature. The parthenogenesis idea persists, but it is now the formula for incarnating demigods or divine kings. These must be slain and raised from the dead in one way or another. All these ideas may be explained by reference to anthropology, but this is not their condemnation, but their justification. For the customs and legends of mankind reflect the true nature of the species. There are absolutely true things to be found in customs and legends. Aeon of Horus, two sexes in one person. Diagma iota alpha omicron diagma. 93. The full formula recognizing the sun, star, as the pre-existent manifested unit, from which all springs, to which all returns. The great work is to make the initial diagramma of Asiya, the world of material illusion, into the final diagramma iota diagramma of Atziluth. For the spelling, see 777, the world of pure reality. Spelling the name in full. Diagramma plus iota diagramma delta plus alpha lambda pi plus omicron iota nu plus diagram iota equals 309 equals SHT equals XX plus XI equals 31. The secret key of the law. Dismiss this entire thing, right? There is nothing contained in that of value. Diagramma is the manifested star. Iota is the secret life. Serpent, light, lamp. Love, wand, liberty, wings, silence, cloak. These symbols are all shown in the Atu, the hermit. They are the powers of Yod, whose extension is the vowel. Yod is the hand wherewith man does his will. It is also the virgin. His essence is inviolate. Alpha is the babe, who has formulated his father and made fertile his mother. Harpocrates, etc., as before, but he develops to Omicron, the exalted devil, the other secret eye, by the formulation of the initiation of Horus, elsewhere described in detail. The devil is called Satan or Shaitan, and regarded with horror by people who are ignorant of his formula, and imagining themselves to be evil, accuse nature herself of her own phantasmal crime. Satan is Saturn, Set, Abraxas, Adad, Adonis, Atis, Adam, Adonai, etc. The most serious charge against him is that he is the sun in the south. The ancient initiates, dwelling as they did in lands whose blood was the water of the Nile or the Euphrates, connected the south with life-withering heat and cursed that quarter where the solar darts were deadliest. Even in the legend of Hiram, it is at high noon when he is stricken down and slain. Capricornus is, moreover, the sign which the sun enters when he reaches his extreme southern declination at the winter solstice, the season of the death of vegetation for the folk of the northern hemisphere. This gave them a second cause for curse in the south. A third, the tyranny of hot, dry, poisonous winds, the menace of deserts or oceans, dreadful because mysterious and impassable. These also were connected in their minds with the south, but to us, aware of astronomical facts, this antagonism to the south is a silly superstition, which the accidents of their local conditions suggested to our animistic ancestors. We see no enmity between right and left, up and down, and similar pair of opposites. These antitheses are real only as a statement of relation. They are the conventions of an arbitrary device for representing our ideals, in a pluralistic symbolism based on duality. Good must be defined in terms of human ideals and instincts. East has no meaning, except with reference to the Earth's internal affairs. As an absolute direction in space, it changes a degree every 4 minutes. Up is the same for no two men unless one chance to be in line, joining the other with the center of the Earth. Hard is the private opinion of our muscles. True is an utterly unintelligent epithet, which has proved refractory to the analysis of our ablest philosophers. We have therefore no scruple in restoring the devil worship of such ideas as those of which the law of sound and the phenomena of speech and hearing compel us to connect with the group of gods, whose names are based upon shit, or duh, vocalized as the free breath A. For these names imply the qualities of courage, frankness, energy, pride, power, and triumph. They are the words which express creative and paternal will, and you are associating that with devil worship. Thus, the devil is Copernicus, the goat who leaps upon the loftiest mountains, the god which, if it became manifest in man, makes him Agapan, the all. The sun enters this sign when he renews the year in the north. He is also the vowel O, proper to roar, to boom, to command, being a forcible breath controlled by the firm circle of the mouth. He is the open eye of the exalted sun, before whom all shadows flee away, also that secret eye which makes an image of its god, the light, and gives its power to utter oracles, enlightening the mind. Thus he is man, made God. No, exalted eager, he has come consciously to his full stature, and so is ready to set out on his journey to redeem the world. But he may not appear in his true form. The vision of Pan would drive men mad with fear. He must conceal himself in his original guise. He therefore becomes apparently the man that he was at the beginning. He lives the life of a man. Indeed, he is wholly man, but his initiation has made him master of the event by giving him the understanding that whatever happens to him is the execution of this true will. Thus, the last stage of his initiation is expressed in our formula as the final diagramma. The series of transformations has not affected his identity, but it has explained him to himself. Similarly, copper is still copper after. Copper plus oxygen equals copper oxide plus hydrogen sulfoxide equals copper sulfoxide, hydrogen and oxygen, plus potassium sulfur equals copper sulfur, potassium, what is SO? Oh, the sulfur oxide. 2,4,4,2,2,2,4 plus blowpipe and reducing agent equals carbon sulfide, or copper sulfide. It is the same copper, but we have learned some of its properties. We observe, especially, that it is indestructible. It is an element, inviolably itself throughout all of its adventures and in all of its disguises. We see, moreover, that it can only make use of its powers, fulfill its possibilities of its nature, and satisfy its equations by thus combining with its counterparts. Its existence as a separate substance is evidence of its subjection to stress, and this is felt as the ache of an incomprehensible yearning, until one realizes that every experience is a relief, an expression of itself, and that it cannot be injured by aught that might befall it. In the eon of Osiris, it was indeed realized that man must die in order to live. But now, in the eon of Horus, we know that every event is death. Subject and object slay each other in love under will. Each such death is life, is itself life, the means by which one realizes oneself in a series of episodes. The second main point is the completion of the A, Babe, Bacchus by the O Pan. Percival wins the lance, etc. The first process is to find the I in the V. Initiation, purification, finding the secret root of oneself, the Epicene Virgin, who is 10, Malkuth, but spelt in full 20. Jupiter. The Yod is the Virgin, expands to the babe in the egg by formulating the secret wisdom of truth of Hermes in the silence of the fool. He acquires the eye wand, beholding and acting and being adored. The inverted pentagram, Baphomet, the hermaphrodite fully grown, begets himself on himself as V again. Note that there are now two sexes in one person throughout, so that each individual is self-procreative sexually, whereas Isis knew only one sex and Osiris thought the two sexes opposed. Also, the formula is now love in all cases, and in the beginning on a higher plane. The I is formed by the V by removing its tail, the A by balancing 4 yods, the O by making an inverted triangle of yods, which suggests the formula of Nuit, Hadit, Ra Horkut, which is his completely created deities. A is the element whirling as a swastika, the creative energy and equally created action. I will point out that the swastika is much older than Germany, right? It is definitely much older than Germany. It was appropriated by the Nazi Party, but they didn't even use it correctly. The swastika is the representation of the logos, which has changed. I can't explain that. That's going to bring us to the end of this. I thought that this last section was going to be shorter and we would keep it under an hour. I was wrong. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is not something I apologize for. Once again, the difference between what works and what doesn't is important. The understanding that everything that he is talking about is based upon a lie, is based upon something that he created, and is based upon evil, right? And I do not use that word lightly. I mean, there is bad and there is evil. Bad is making poor choices. Evil is intentionally making those bad choices, right? Being aligned for the detriment of humankind. Telling people to do magic is being aligned for the detriment of humankind. Telling people to do sex magic, same thing. Telling people to identify themselves with the Beast of Revelation or the Scarlet Woman or any of that is aligning yourself with the bad things. It is intentionally choosing to align yourself with bad. That is not making a mistake. That is intentionally choosing, and that is the root of evil. Intentionally choosing something that you know is not for the betterment, but instead is for the detriment, is choosing evil. And if you are choosing one target, including yourself, as the sole beneficiary of magic, you are aligned wrong. And that's where we're going to leave it. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree with anything that was said, put it in the box down below. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or picking up a copy of my book where I teach you to do magic responsibly. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been Fit State. Peace.